evening and welcome to Girlfriend Therapy Radio. I am your host, Kwanzaa. I am excited to be here. I'm always excited to be here. I told you guys before, Thursday has quickly become my favorite day of the week. Who would have thunk it? But I love Thursdays. I love doing Girlfriend Therapy Radio. As you guys know, these past few weeks, this whole season 2 has been a little heavy. I've talked a lot about spiritual warfare. I've started, as you guys know, the new segment, top trending topics. And so everything that I've talked about has been super duper heavy. And so today I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I wanted to, just kind of keep it light, keep it light and light to not be too heavy or, too much darkness. I really wanted to keep it light and just kind of talk about some of the things that I wanted to talk about. And so tonight's Girlfriend Therapy Radio, I'm actually calling Uncut and Uncensored. Now, the uncut isn't like a real thing because I kind of do this live every week, so you kind of hear what you hear. So it's not really uncut in that regard. But the uncensored part, that's probably what you want to stick around for because, I usually am very careful about what I say. I'm very careful about how I say things. Whether people recognize it or not, I really do take special attention and pay special attention to what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. And sometimes it's not always that obvious, but I am very careful about what I say and how I say it because I just really believe that, tone matters. And so, like I said, tonight we're going to talk, it's going to be Girlfriend Therapy, Uncut, Uncensored. I was trying to figure out what to talk about today. You guys will, just roll along with me. We're going to have a good time. But I did decide that I will stick with, for this segment or this episode, that I will stick with the top trending topic. As you guys know, like I said, the past few weeks have been incredibly heavy. And so I didn't want to do anything heavy. But I came across this top topic earlier today or yesterday. I can't even remember which. But I thought that it was hilarious. I wanted to share it. I'm not going to get into too much detail. I just want to share with you guys what it is. And the topic was of Melania Trump. And it was saying that she might have a body double. Can I tell you guys how hilarious I thought that was? Like, that was the funniest thing that I have heard all year. And so, of course, they have pictures of her with these dark sunglasses on, and, people are speculating that it's not her, but in fact that she has a body double. I read one headline, I think it was a headline or somebody's tweet or something, but they said that it was like, yep, I knew it. She left a month ago. So insinuating that, that the real Melania Trump has left Trump. And so they have like this body double that's sitting in on her behalf. I thought that was hilarious. And I'll tell you what, in this era of fake news and in this era of, just headlines being made up, and this is one that I can get on board with. Like, this was so funny to me. Just the idea of it, right? Just the idea that she doesn't like him that much, that she actually left him. Like, that's not funny if she left him. That's serious. But it's funny if she did because she doesn't like him. I don't know. And I think it makes it even funnier because this is kind of like the thing that they've been speculating. Like, you guys remember like when she swatted his hand away. They're just not as lovable and as not as, as attuned with one another as, we've probably been used to seeing back in with some previous families or whatever. But I thought that was funny. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, I could totally I can get with that. Like, I want to see the movie of a wife of I can't even say the word. But yeah, I would love to see that movie. That would be hilarious. And it would be a comedy, right? It would be so freaking funny. So that is the top trending topic, just this whole idea that Melania Trump might have a body double. That's hilarious. I will continue to follow that topic. Listen to it, follow it, see where it goes. A lot of people are saying that it's not true. But I don't know. I've seen some of the pictures, and I think the conspiracy theorist in me would suggest that it might be some truth to that. It might be possible. We already know, I think that she's decided that she doesn't want to live in a White House and she wants to stay in New York. And, there are some things that she's already did to show that she's not really feeling this whole thing. So I would not be surprised honestly, truly, guys, I would not be surprised. So I think it's hilarious. Like I said, I'll continue to follow it, see where we go with this. But I'm going with that. I'm going with that she has a, that's my answer. That she absolutely has a body double. That's my answer. So we'll watch this story and see where it goes. But like I said, keeping it light, I think that was a really light, top trending topic. So we're going to get into tonight's topic. We're actually going to take a break before we go, or before we jump into tonight's topic. We're going to take a quick break. But like I said, tonight we're going to do girlfriend therapy, uncut, uncensored, and we're going to see what we talk about. We're going to see where we go with this thing. So you guys stay tuned, stick around. We're going to have a great, great topic for you, great session, great show. So stick around, and we will be right back. Okay, so we are back. As you guys know, tonight we have Girlfriend Therapy Radio, Uncut and Uncensored. I'm excited about tonight's show. I'll tell you guys, there was a quote that I actually came across today. So let me back up a little bit. So basically, I woke up this morning after thinking all week, what do I want to talk about on Girlfriend Therapy Radio? All week I've been thinking about this, and I've been thinking about, the topics that we've talked about over in the past. We've talked about, like I said, a lot of heavy topics, and I was kind of getting a little tired of it, not tired of it, but a little exhausted behind it. Because it takes a lot of emotional energy. It takes a lot of spiritual energy when you're talking about such heavy topics. And so as I was thinking all week about what to talk about, I went to bed last night completely like I have no idea what I'm going to talk about on the radio tomorrow. And so this morning when I woke up, I knew that I had to schedule the program. And kind of get the word out. So this morning when I woke up, I was like, we're going to do Girlfriend Therapy, Uncut and Uncensored. I said it, but I still had no idea what that meant. Girlfriend Therapy, Uncut and Uncensored. And so today, I was just kind of thinking about, I posted it. I scheduled a program. I posted it to say, hey, join me on the radio from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk girlfriend therapy, uncut and uncensored. And even when I posted that, I had no idea what I would talk about. I knew, as I said in the beginning, I knew that I wanted it to be light and not heavy and dark. And so I kind of, that's all I knew. That's all I knew that I wanted to do. And so today I came across, or earlier today, I came across a post, and I was like, this is totally it. Like, this really says what this whole girlfriend therapy, uncut and uncensored means. And the quote, and I apologize, I don't know who it's by, but it simply says, I like when I don't have to be careful about what I say. That's when I know I'm talking to the right people. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm usually really careful about what I say for various reasons. One, I think the most obvious is that you don't want to come off rude. You don't want to hurt people's feelings. You guys remember I did a show last season where I talked about, do you understand the words that are coming out of your mouth? So with that, I'm very conscious and careful about the things that I say. I posted, I forget who the quote was by, but it talked about, having a mouth gate, and it talked about, only speaking on those things that I think it was true. I know I was going to forget. It's true, it's something, and it's necessary. And I always circle the necessary part because a lot of times we say stuff and it's just simply not necessary. And so I, on the other side of that, I'm just really careful about the things that I say. And I kind of ask myself those questions, like, is it necessary for me to say, even in response to stuff that other people do? And so I think we do that a lot. At least I know I do that a lot. I'm really careful. And because I'm really careful, I kind of walk around a little censored, but again, I censor myself, one, because I don't want to be rude. I don't want to come off offensive. And some people, they take pride in being rude and offensive, and that's just not me. And so when I thought about that quote, it just really resonated with me. And not that, even uncensored, it's not that I would say things that would, really offend people or really, kind of come off like horrible. But again, I do take care in just paying attention to, saying things where I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I don't want to say something that, will put anybody in a bad light. And so when I read that quote, it just really resonated with me, and it resonated with what I wanted to talk about today, or not really what I wanted to talk about, but it resonated with the mind state that I was in with regards to girlfriend uncut and uncensored. And so, from that quote, I was kind of, still thinking about what it is I wanted to talk about. I even Googled, guys. I Googled, because I was going to just do like a Q&A, but I feel like I did that before. I did that kind of with, Kwanzaa in a nutshell. I think I shared that. If not, I'll have to share it. But I also did that when, with my promo, Who's Kwanzaa. So I did different things for you guys to kind of get a sense of who I am. So I didn't want to do like that kind of setup, but I did Google, and I came across this thing that says 20 questions. And as I was reading through the questions, they had questions like, just generic questions like, what are you thankful for? What are you most thankful for? They had questions like, if money was no object, what would you do in your life? There were like 20 questions, and I actually settled on the 20th question, and I thought, this is perfect. As I was reading through the questions again, they just kind of felt a little generic for me, and I didn't really want to, spend the whole girlfriend therapy, uncut, uncensored, talking about those things. I wanted to, really talk from my heart about whatever topics I wanted to talk about. And so the question that resonated with me, like I said, was actually the 20th question on this list of 20 questions. And the question simply was, what do you think about most often? And I thought, that is it. What do I think about most often? And I had to laugh, and I continue to laugh because my brain is constantly going, like I'm always thinking. And so when I seen that question, I realized, okay, this is the question I want to answer. What do I think about most often? And so I began to jot down what I think about most often. And I realized that I think about a lot of stuff. Like there's not one singular thought that I continue to have, but rather I think about a lot of stuff. And so I wanted to just kind of talk about like what's in the mind of Kwanzaa. What does she think about? What is she, what is what's on my mind? What do I think about? What is the, continuing things or the continuous things that just kind of resonate or rotate in my head? And so the first thing that I wrote down, let me say this preface before I even get into the things that I think about often. I will say that I don't think a lot about, what is the word? Like pop culture. I don't think a lot about that. Not that I'm not interested. Like there are things that interest me, and you guys will probably be surprised to hear. Let me see, the last pop culture thing that I was really interested in. I was really interested in the fact that Cardi B was like the first #1, female hip hop artist on the Billboard charts. I thought that was awesome. So that was something I was interested in, and I was proud of her and happy for it, even though, the music is what it is, but I think the whole idea behind the fact that you have this young woman who came from where she came from with this dream and was able to, get this big machine behind her and accomplish something great. And I think that is something to be, applauded, morality out the window. Just the idea of a woman, putting her hands to something. And this without question, I know every interview that I've seen her do, she talks about how much work she puts in. And so you guys might be surprised to hear that, but I'm super proud of her. I'm super proud of the accomplishment that she's made. What else? Latest pop culture thing that I was interested in. And I guess because I don't really look at myself like hip hop. But growing up in the 80s, I think you still kind of have a little bit of that hip-hop buzz. I kind of pay attention a little bit to what's going on, although a lot of the music nowadays I'm not really interested in. So I say for that reason, I don't really call myself hip-hop, because people I know that's hip-hop, like, they're still even engaged with the music that's going on now. So what else in pop culture that I'm really interested in? I think that's it. I think that's really it. I think one other thing I'll share, and I probably shared this before. I love listening to, I get my news from, this is embarrassing, but I get a lot of my news, especially before doing the top trending topics. I get a lot of my news from the Breakfast Club, with DJ Envy, Charlemagne, Angela Yee. I get my news from those guys. I love Donkey of the Day. That is like my daily dose of, Kiki. What else me with pop culture? I think that's kind of it. I think that's kind of it. So I said all of that to say that the things that I think about most often are not like just social pop culture type things. So some of the things I think about most often is kind of deep. I think to go into my head, there is an interesting space. So I don't know why I'm hesitating to just kind of jump in. But so I'll go down the list of the things that I think about most often, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about each or all or some of the things that I'll share. So what do I think about most often? First thing that I think about most often is I think about my faith. I think about, who I am as a Christian. I think about what that means as it pertains to everything that I do. I think about my faith all the time. I think where some people kind of identify themselves, based off of their biological makeup, I think I identify myself mostly as a woman of God, and maybe secondly as a Black woman. So there are a couple of things that I identify myself as, but more than anything else, I identify myself as a woman of God. And then I identify myself as a Black woman. Those are probably the two biggest identifiers for me. And then everything else under that, a wife, a mother, an author, a publisher, a speaker, a radio host, a ministry leader, like all those other things are, all encompassing as well. But I think what I think about more than anything else, I think about my faith. I think about the things that I do in and, you know, and how God feels about it. I think about the things that I do and what the Holy Spirit thinks about it. I go to bed thinking about my faith. I wake up thinking about my faith. I think about my faith as it pertains to everything. So that is one of the things that I think about most often is I think about my faith. Yeah. And another thing that I think about most often is I think about my family. As you guys may know, I'm married. I have 2 children. I have a huge extended family. But I think about my family often, and I think about them. And I think here, like, I don't worry about them, which is a blessing, but I think about them as it pertains to the moves that I'm making, the things that I'm doing, the decisions that I make. I think about not only how does it affect my faith, not only what does God think about it, what does Jesus think about it, how does the Holy Spirit feel about it, but I also think about what do my husband think about this, what will my children think about this. So I'm very conscious and aware in that way, you know, thinking about my family, thinking about, you know, the things that I do and how it will affect them. So not thinking about them in a sense of worrying about them, but just thinking about them as it pertains to what I do and how, you know, what I do will affect them. So that's the second thing that I think about most often. Another thing that I think about is, and this is probably more recently, I think a lot about the state of our nation. And I think this thought probably really came from some of the topics that I talked about over the past few weeks. I think this thought comes as in response to the political nature. I think it comes in response to a lot of the, you know, racial tension that we're experiencing as a nation. So I think about the state of the nation a lot, far more than I think I ever have in the past, far more than I have in the past, and I really attribute that to this, you know, to the state of where we are. Like I said, the social climate, the political climate, the racial tension, the protests, like all of the things that I've been talking about over the past few weeks. Those are all I think fuel that's fuel that's kind of feeding this thought that I've had recently here about the state of our nation. Now, with regards to the state of the nation, I think initially I was really concerned, and I think there's so much going on, and if you don't know how to process it, if you don't know how to, you know, compartmentalize and all that stuff, if you don't know how to, you know, to pray about it and find peace with everything, I think it can become overwhelming. And at a minimum, it can become exhausting. And I think one of the things that I felt more than anything else was this very real sense of fatigue. Like I was really tired. I was tired of talking about it. I was tired, and it is everything. I was tired of reading about it. I was tired of talking about it. And in fact, I woke up, was it yesterday morning? I woke up yesterday morning, and this was after just kind of, you know, days of just a lot going on, you know, to include, you know, like I said, the past few shows. But I woke up the other morning, and I was just kind of praying, and I was asking God. In fact, I want to bring this scripture out. But I was asking God, you know, like there's so much going on, and just really trying to figure out what is it that, you know, that God expects from us. What are we supposed to do as believers in the midst of all that we are seeing, in the midst of all that's going on? What is it that we're supposed to do as believers? And the Spirit of God sent me to, Matthew 24, and I want to start with, I'll just start probably at, I'll start at verse 4. So Matthew 24, verse 4. And I think I'm reading from the NIV version. I actually just pulled my phone out, so I'm actually reading from the NIV version. But this was a question that I asked God, and this is where the Spirit of God took me to Matthew 24. And specifically because I think I was having a conversation, we were talking about the end times. And so as I started thinking about the end times, you know, my question was, all right, Lord, what are we as Christians? What is our responsibility? What are we supposed to do as we, you know, encounter, you know, end time type behaviors, activities, whatever it is? What is it that we're supposed to do? What is our response? And like I said, the Spirit of God took me to Matthew 24, and I'll start at 4. And I'll start at 3. And it says, as Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? And verse 4 says, Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. And there was 2 very pivotal points that Jesus made in that scripture that really just resonated with me. The first one comes from verse 4 of that chapter, and he says, "Watch out that no one deceives you." So that is the work of that's what we as believers are supposed to do. Watch out that no one deceives you. And the second thing he said came from verse 6. Verse 6 of that same chapter, and it says, you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. And he says, but see to it that you are not alarmed. So 2 things. 1, watch out that no one deceives you, and 2, see to it that you are not alarmed. So those are really, I think, the posture and the stance that we're supposed to take as believers, as we go through or encounter, what is believed to be these end days, these last days. And then there was another part, but I'm not going to read the entire scripture or the entire chapter, but I will go all the way down to verse 44 in that same Matthew 24, verse 44. And he goes on to say, still talking about some of the things that we will see in the last days. And he said that, he said, no man knows the day or the hour. He said, so basically, in verse 44, so you must always be ready. He said, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. So 3 things. 1, watch out that no one deceives you. And that's 24:4. The second thing is see that you are not alarmed when you see all the things that's going on around you. And that's 24:6. And then lastly, the last point I wanted to pull out was be ready. And that's verse 24 or 24:44. I'm sorry. And so when I think about the state of the nation, those are that's really kind of what I'm thinking about, because of so many things that we're seeing and how, there's just so much destruction, on so many levels. There's so much destruction. And as a believer, especially as a minister even, just trying to figure out, how do I navigate this? How do I continue to walk upright in ministry and do the work of ministry, and encourage people in the midst of everything else that we're experiencing? So, in the truth of God's word. So understanding for myself what my posture is supposed to be. Again, watching out that I'm not deceived. And that means really being in tune with the Spirit of God that's in us and really having discernment. But then also, seeing that we're not alarmed. That means not being afraid of what it is that we see or what we encounter or what's going on around us, that we are not afraid of it. But then the last part is to be ready. And I think that is the thing that, if I can just express that, I don't think I can express that enough for us to just be ready. So yeah, that's the other thing. I think about the state of the nation, and again, more than I've ever done before. And the next thing that I think a lot about, or I think about most often, is my purpose, and am I fulfilling it? I know that there are so many things that God has laid before me. I often talk about First Fruits Publishing, which was the first platform that God has given me. I talk about girlfriend therapy. You guys know I talk a lot about girlfriend therapy. Girlfriend therapy tends to have really this life of its own, and so I talk a lot about girlfriend therapy. I talk about the consulting and communications group. I'm actually, just working all 3 of those mantles. And then expanding and growing in each area, and really trying to make sure that everything that I do is aligned to my purpose. and making sure that the things that I do are not things that I do because I want to do them, but they're things that I do because this is what God is calling me to do. I've alluded to this before, that it takes a lot of attention, a lot of, just listening and yielding and hearing from God to really make sure that the decisions that you're making are consistent with His will for your life. Because a lot of times we can really get wrapped up in doing our own thing. And I'll tell you, in the earlier years of girlfriend therapy specifically, I remember, one year just really getting just wrapped up around the details of the conference, the details of the ministry. And it was like so consuming. And I remember really getting hung up on the details. And I remember God taking me to the scripture, and I think it's found in the book of Matthew, where He talked about, what's more sacred, the altar or the gift that's placed on the altar. And the scripture goes on and says, what's more sacred, the gold or the altar that the gold is placed on? And what I got from that, what the Holy Spirit revealed to me concerning girlfriend therapy as it pertains to that particular scripture and verse, what I got from that is that the work is most important. It's not about the, how many chairs are in a row. It's not about, it's not about like a lot of the little details that I get wrapped up in, but it's about, being in the right spirit and knowing and allowing and yielding to the Spirit of God to have His way in that space, whether it's girlfriend therapy conference, girlfriend therapy forum, girlfriend therapy healing circle, girlfriend therapy radio, just yielding myself to allow God to have His way in that space. And that's what's more sacred. That's what God is working through, that's the important thing. That's the main thing, or the principal thing, if you will. And so when I think about my purpose, that's always the question I have. Am I fulfilling it? Am I doing, I always say, doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm supposed to be doing? That continues to be one of those things that just resonate with me. And I shared this before. I often, whenever, especially in dreams, when I feel like I'm in the presence of someone greater than me. And I've done this at least 3 times in dreams, and I've shared it a couple of them. But in one of the dreams, I was talking to an older woman. She was an old lady with 2 really long plaits. And she was very old, and I was talking with her. And in this dream, she was saying that, you're a teacher, you must teach. And I remember waking up and journaling that. But I also remember in that dream, one of the questions that I often ask is, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Am I okay? Is what I'm doing okay? I would always ask that question in dreams. And another dream that I had, this was many years ago, probably about 7 years ago, I had a dream, and I was on top of this really high mountain, and I could just see nothing but, flat lands just all around me. But I was like really high up, and up on that mountain with me was a gaur, and that's what was that, Guar, which is like this. I guess it comes from maybe the buffalo family, but it was this beautiful buffalo, and he was like right there. Like I can just see his eyes. Like even if I close my eyes right now, I can just see the vision that I had in my dream. I can see, his fine hairs. I can see his eyes blinking, and I was asking him, am I doing the right thing? Is what I'm doing all right? Am I all right? And he was just nodding his head. And so when I think about, to me, I think I spend so much time just really wondering and hoping and praying and asking of God, am I fulfilling my purpose? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Am I where I'm supposed to be? Like that is a question, like a deep question that I always have. So without question, that's something that I think about often. Am I where I'm supposed to be? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? That's a very, very deep question, specifically as it pertains to my purpose. Am I fulfilling my purpose? Am I fulfilling my purpose? Another thing that I think about often, it kind of aligns with my purpose, But I think my purpose is, if I had to give myself a tagline, and I think I've said this before, I think that my tagline would be faith-based communications. I think that is my tagline. So if I had to, try to paint or put my purpose in a box, it would have something to do with communicating the faith to the masses on every platform. I talk about the fact that, even my academic background is communications, like everything, how it aligns in such a beautiful way. The fact that I have an academic background in communications and the fact that I'm a publisher and a writer, the fact that I'm a speaker, the fact that I now have a radio platform, the fact that I do podcasts, and all of these things collectively, is all about communicating. And I think the importance of what I'm communicating is like really the main thing. And so that's where I really focus on the ministry part of it, and the importance of just being consistent within myself and knowing who I am and what it is that I'm communicating, and no matter what platform I'm on, making sure or ensuring that, that I'm consistent, that I'm consistently me, and I'm consistent in what I do. So in that regard, I think about my ministry a lot. I think about work that I do under ministry a lot. And I think about this so much, and it's such a sensitive, personal thing for me. I can't even explain how sensitive and personal it is. Even talking about it right now, like I can just feel it. But it really is very sensitive and very personal for me. And in these times, watching how people move in ministry, sometimes, it's very uncomfortable to watch. It's uncomfortable to witness. It concerns me, particularly when they kind of move in my direction with regards to ministry and try to align themselves with me or try to tell me what I'm supposed to look like in ministry, which is something that I faced early on in ministry. That was something that I faced early on. And even now, for Girlfriend Therapy to be a ministry that is set apart from or not connected to a larger church body, I still get some kind of, looks and you get a little resistance from that. I still get a little resistance from that. And I guess it is what it is. But what I understand is that that's kind of, as we move into, these end times, particularly, what God has called me to is very specific. And without question, I see how what he's called me to, how it goes so much against the grain of where we're moving to as a culture. Like, I don't even know if I have enough time to talk about this, but we're uncensored and uncut, right? So, but it goes against the grain of where we're going as a culture. And I remember early on, like, Lord, why are you calling me to this when everything else is moving in that direction? And so with that, there, I recognize that the mantles that God has given me, like, these are very real and very specific mantles. And although they may not look like much right now, I understand without question the significance of each and every and understand the significance of it, and I'm committed to it. But as I look at what God is doing with me, from a spiritual perspective, and I look at where the world is moving towards, and even those in the faith, how they're moving in ministry, and how it's such a it's so opposite to what it is that God is doing with me in ministry. And so, so I spend a lot of time thinking about ministry. I spend a lot of time thinking about what I'm doing in ministry. I spend a lot of time, again, uncensored, uncut, uncensored. I spend a lot of time crying about ministry. I spend a lot of time being very emotional as it pertains to me in ministry. It's just real, but I appreciate it. Like, I love what God is doing with me. I love what God is doing through me. I love the work that he's called me to. It's not easy, and it certainly is not, I don't think it's mainstream, but I think it's necessary. And so my work is to, continue to be committed to the necessity of that which God has called me to. So, yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about my ministry and the work that I do in ministry. I mean, so much time thinking about ministry and to think about the work that I do in ministry. I think about the connections that I make. I think about the posts that I make. I think about the things that I like on social media. I think about the music that I listen to. I'll tell you guys again, Uncut, Uncensored. I was telling my husband I couldn't get that Cardi B song out of my head. So I was so happy to see when this girl did this, I guess, a face-based rendition. She's like, I make face moves. I love that. So now I can say that as opposed to, the lines that Cardi B says in hers. But again, so even stuff like that, like I understand the spiritual ramifications of the things that we do. And I think because I understand it and I think about it across the scale of everything that I do, I'm always thinking about the spiritual ramifications, the spiritual ramifications. I remember years ago, not to derail myself too much, but I remember years ago, I was I was getting my tire changed, and I was at one of these little tire change places, and so I went over. I usually always carry a book with me, but this particular day, for whatever reason, I didn't have a book in my purse or my bag, and so I went into one of the little stores nearby, and I purchased just a book, and it was a book that was popular, that was out at that time. And I bought the book, and my expectation was that while they worked on my car, I would sit there and read the book. And I probably got to like page 1, and I can just feel the spirit of that book. I mean, it just nauseated me. And it was a secular book. It was like a nonfiction secular book, and it just nauseated me. And I knew that I couldn't read it, and so I closed the book, and I actually put it in my purse. And I was going to give it away because it was a book that a lot of people wanted. A lot of people were reading at the time. And so I was going to give the book away. But the Spirit of God was like, throw it away. And I'm just like, and the Spirit of God was like, don't even take it to your house, throw it away. And I ended up just throwing it in a dumpster. So that's how my mind works. So when I talk about thinking about everything spiritually, I really, 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 really do. And sometimes it's nonstop, so it's kind of inside my brain because sometimes it is nonstop. But, I think about that, and I think about, again, the music I listen to, the programs I watch on TV. I'm not nearly there was a season where I was incredibly sensitive, and God pulled me away from, secular music. It was a season where, it's just really a season of separation. And now I can kind of watch stuff and not be too grieved. Like years ago, I remember, we were overseas and we had, people would send like the Def Comedy Jam whole series. And I remember, there was a season where I couldn't watch it because it was, it just wasn't edifying for me, and it wasn't aligned with what God was doing with me. And so, and so for that reason, I couldn't watch it. And but that was a season. And now, I don't really have the appetite for a lot of that stuff, but I can definitely watch different programs and not get super offended whenever I hear, vulgarity, depending on the level of it. But if it's like nonstop, consistent, and, I kind of see that it's unnecessary. So, so I don't know where I was going with that one. I guess, what I think about when I think about ministry, that's why I think so deeply about ministry, because I really am in tune with the spiritual ramifications of everything. And I look at everything, through spiritual eyes. I really do, and process everything through the spiritual filter. So sometimes in doing that, you kind of come off a little extra, or you might come off a little like doing too much or whatever. But that's just how my brain works. That's how, how I'm wired, just kind of wired that way. But it works because my ministry, like I said, is faith-based communications. And in order to communicate, you have to be able to know, what distortions are in between you and the hearer. That's probably a whole nother message. Maybe I'll key that one up for another week. But I think in communicating, being a communicator, you have to understand what are those roadblocks and those things that will prevent my message from getting across to to those who are listening. And so, so thinking about ministry is like nonstop for me. Um, and another thing, even along those same lines, and and I'm looking at my list, guys, of what I wrote down. But one of the other things when I think about what do I think about the most, another thing in line with my ministry, I think a lot about, what will my ministry look like fully bloomed? I have no idea, guys. I mean, I try to imagine what it will look like. But I'll tell you, when God called me to First Fruits Publishing, and that is a ministry because I publish Christian work. I look at that as a ministry. When God called me to Girlfriend Therapy Ministry, I try to imagine what both of them will look like fully bloomed, and even the consulting and communications group, even more than I think Girlfriend Therapy and First Fruits Publishing, because I have like a rhythm behind those two. But with the consulting and communications group, like I'm still building. And so it is very difficult for me to figure out what will that look like fully bloomed. Like I know what my heart's desire is pertaining to it, but I just don't know what it will look like fully bloomed. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about that. I spend a lot of time, wondering like what connections will I make in the next few years that will make a difference. And sometimes because I'm thinking about it, sometimes when I go into a relationship, or especially business relationship, or even a new venture, business venture, I'm always like, oh, is this going to be the thing that's just going to? So I still kind of in the back of my mind have that thought, but I can't even begin to honestly imagine what any of the ministries that God has given me, or any of the platforms, or any of the mantles that God has given me. I have no idea what it will look like fully bloomed, because I think that my understanding, or even my vision for it, is so small. And I don't want it to be what I think it should be. I want it to be everything that God has called it to be, which goes back to my original point. Like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I where I'm supposed to be? All of that is just for the benefit, or the purpose of really being in the will of God. And all of that is for the purpose of making sure that what I'm doing is what God would have me to do, and that it's, for, the building up of the saints, the edifying of the saints, the building up of the body, for the work of ministry. Like, all of that is really is really my purpose. And so I can't even begin to think about or imagine what the ministry work that God has called me to do, what it will look like fully bloomed. And I say that, because probably 2 years ago, I wouldn't have even imagined the consulting and communications group. And so I say that knowing that, at the beginning of this year, I wouldn't even imagine, FFP Media Network. I would imagine having a production arm, to First Fruits Publishing, where we're doing television, radio, podcast. That's the vision. I cast the vision, and knowing that God is able. So I can't even begin to imagine what the work that God has called me to, what it will look like fully bloomed. But my prayer is without question that I am, that I am equipped, and that I do not lose sight of it at all, not even for a second. So yeah, that's another thing I think about. What does my ministry, or what will my ministry look like fully bloomed? And the final thing that I think about, and this is probably way too deep, it's probably deeper than I wanted to go. Remember, guys, I said I wanted to stay light, but I think it's necessary, and I think it brings everything together. So one of the final things that I think about when that I think about often is, what will my life look like when I come to the end of it? That may seem too morbid for some people, but I'm truly believing God for long life. I always say I want to live to be 102. So that gives me, I'm not even halfway there, which is a blessing. So that means I have a lot of years to do a lot of amazing things, to continue to build the body of Christ, to continue to build in ministry. So when I think about what my life might look like when I come to the end of it, I talked about in my book, According to Your Faith Be It Unto You. I think I actually closed with this. I talked about how I don't want to leave any rock unturned. Like, I want to do everything everything that God has designed and purposed for me to do. Like when he breathed breath into me and he said, Kwanzaa, be. When he breathed breath into me and I took that very first breath and opened my eyes, I want to live out every purpose, everything that he imagined for me when he breathed life into me. I want to live out everything. I think about a class that I'm taking right now. I was sharing a quote that I got from someone else. And the quote I actually got from Dave Ramsey when we were taking Financial Peace a few years ago. And he said this thing, he said, every penny has an assignment. And I wrote it down, and it just really resonated with me. Every penny has an assignment. And it's like when you think about that, every penny has an assignment. That means everything that comes with it. When you get your paycheck, everything belongs to something. Like everything is accounted to something. And so from that, one of the things I often say is that not only does every penny has an assignment, but I say that every minute has an assignment. I believe that every minute that God has given us, that there is something purpose for that minute. There's something that we're supposed to do in that minute. And I think that something sometimes is just what we purpose to do in that minute. And then other times is what God has preordained and predestined for us to do in that minute. And I just want to show up in every minute that God has purposed for me to do what it is. If there's a minute where I'm supposed to rest, I want to have the wisdom to rest. If it's a minute where I'm supposed to work, I want to have the wisdom, the courage, the strength, the wherewithal, the foresight, all of that to do the work. When it's a minute where I have to work harder than the others, I want to have the strength, the endurance, and everything that I need to work harder than others in that minute. Like I want to live out the full purpose of every minute. And not only do I say that every penny has an assignment and every minute has an, but I believe that every purpose has an assignment, and that assignment is so much bigger than who we are. That assignment is bigger than our hopes and our dreams. That assignment is really for the purpose of giving to this existence what only you can give to it. And when people don't understand what their purpose is, like everybody is always thinking their purpose is supposed to be something grand scale or something that's on a stage or something that requires a light and something that requires, an entourage or an audience. But sometimes our purpose is like, it may even go unnoticed to other people, but it's important to the people that it's important to. And so, when I think about that, it's such a beautiful imagery in my head. That's why I spend so much time in my head, because I'm very, what is the word? Imaginative. And so a lot of the things that I say, I can see it better than I can say it. And so when I think about Kwanzaa at the end of her life, first of all, I see myself, like I said, 102, well in my right mind, with all of my faculties about me, able to get up and walk and drive and do whatever it is that I want to do, fully, like I said, in my right mind. And I see myself just like, okay, this has been good. I'm ready to go now. Like I just see it as being something as simple as that. Do that. I want to know that I have done everything that that God has purposed for me to do. I don't want to leave any unfinished business. I want to leave a legacy. So if there is any unfinished business, I want it to be business that, that my children and their children can get behind, that they can find themselves in, that they can find their purpose in, that they can, continue to carry it to the next level. So that's how I see it. That's what I think about when I think about me coming to the end of my life. I just see myself, doing all the things that God has called me to do. I see myself, at the utmost level of intelligence, utmost level of wisdom, just all of that. So that's what I think about when I look at, think about what it looks like to come to the end of life. Just this incredible, this incredible existence, something that will inspire those who are around me, that will inspire those who've encountered me. So that's what I think about. So those are all the things that I think about most often. As you guys can see, there is no, there's nothing shallow here. Most of my thoughts are probably, nonstop depth, but that's just how my mind works. And I like it in my head, and I like to be able to share what's going on in my head. I don't always get the opportunity to do that because people, quite frankly, aren't always interested in it. But those are the things that goes on in my head and in my thinking. And so to be able to do this kind of show, Uncut, Uncensored, is really just about letting you guys know what's going on with me, what I think about, where do I spend most of my mental energy? And like I said, where I spend most of my energy, my mental energy, really in a nutshell, is with regards to my faith, with regards to my family, and then me as a wife, a mother, me as a minister, with regards to my ministry, regards to my business. That's where I spend a lot of my energy. And I do think about, the state of the world. I think about, I don't know if I mentioned this, I think about the state of, and I guess that goes into like the state of the nation. When I think about the state that African Americans are, dealing with and going through with regards to, again, the racial tension. So I did kind of allude to that. So those are some of the things I think about, but I get most joy and I enjoy most thoughts about, my faith and my family. So I hope that made sense to you guys. I thank you so much for just joining me, Uncut and Uncensored, for some Girlfriend Therapy Radio. Thank you guys so much. I love you guys. And I didn't believe I was going to talk that entire time, but I did. So next week, I think I'm going to, I'm not going to do this again. This was kind of like a purging that I think I needed to do. But next week, we'll be back on our regular schedule. We'll be back on our regular lineup. We'll start with our top trending topics, although I thought the one tonight was hilarious. Then we'll kind of go into our chunk of our show, which will be something, points and all that. And then we'll kind of get back to the That's So Cliche. But for tonight, I thank you guys again for joining us at Girlfriend Therapy Radio for Uncut and Uncensored. Until next week, I bid you guys God's best blessings. So yes, blessings.
Thank you.